Sister Joan Chittister, a noted Benedictine sister, spiritual writer, and speaker, has, I found, a very interesting reflection on today's gospel, and I'd like to read part of it. She says, "The most religious of all that Jesus shows us may be the loving acceptance of those who have trouble doing what's religious, doing the right thing." She was on to say, "So intent are we on religion that sometimes we forget righteousness." So intent are we on religion that sometimes we forget righteousness. That, I submit, friends, is the exact opposite of what Jesus did in interacting with those in today's gospel. He had two conversations, one with the Pharisees and one with the woman. In the first conversation, Jesus spoke with the scribes and Pharisees, and then he condemns their lack of compassion. Right away he saw that they had appealed to religion, their religion, which did prescribe the stoning of people caught in adultery, the stoning of women caught in adultery. They don't mention any of the guys, it's just the women. And in the second conversation, he spoke to the woman. A look at both. The scribes and the Pharisees showed themselves as the most uncaring and completely lacking in compassion. How that poor woman must have been suffering. The suffering that was increasing as they were using her to try to trap Jesus to say something against the law. And you heard how Jesus responded. After bending down and writing in his sand, he stood up and he said, "Let the one who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." That put an end to the ugly situation. There's no one without sin. So no one should throw stones at that woman or at anybody else. Some people may react the same way now, wanting to throw stones, although the stones are different. The stones now might be the stones that emanate in our heart and our mind and come out of our mouths. Gossip, hurtful words, posting something wicked about somebody on the internet. Something like what the scribes and the Pharisees did. No one should throw stones at someone else. Why? We all have sinned. We are in no position to judge. Certainly no position to judge someone as a sinner. The second conversation Jesus had is between him and the woman. He says to the woman, "Neither do I condemn you." And his words and his gesture, did you notice he bowed down? He bowed down. It's almost like he spoke to her on her level. And he treats her so differently from the way the scribes and the Pharisees did. They were condemning and threatening. He was interested in her right relationship with the Lord. That is, her righteousness. He didn't condemn her. And what a contrast that was. And there is a difference between the way society may think of us and the way Jesus and God thinks of us. If the woman thought of herself the way those around her did, what an error that would be on her part. The same is true for you and for me. There's only one way to think of ourselves, and that's the way Jesus and God does. Our value is not in what others say, although sometimes when it's positive, it's wonderful, but it's what Jesus would say about us. The way others think of us may be tainted by the human imperfections and maybe even their Instead, I once heard or read that the Lord looks on us, especially those with whom we cannot get along and may have a whole cradle of stones in our hearts ready to hurl. The Lord looks on us and on those people with whom we don't get along, and he sees the potential that he placed in each of us. All the good, all the virtue that we could do, that's the way I think God looks at us. Since Jesus has freed us from all that, we could live with freedom and the value he gives us. So he says to the woman, go and from now on don't sin anymore. Jesus, by saying that, has drawn a line between her past and her future. He did two things at once. He forgave her, but he also challenged her to reform her life. He forgave her past sin, but he appealed to her virtue in the future. Again, I say, he does the same thing for you and for me. Jesus released this woman from her past, but she must not return to her former way of life again. He loved her despite her past, but he expected her to overcome sin after meeting him and be completely different after meeting him. One cannot meet Jesus and be the same afterwards. Remember the words of the prophet in the first reading? I am doing something new. Meeting Jesus is the beginning of allowing the Lord to do something new in you and me. And so, let us, along with Sister Jones' admonition, not let, quote, our religion get in the way of our righteousness. Let us release those stones that we have here in our hearts, especially if they're directed towards another sinner, just like you